The story started in early June when I was about to turn 18, but now I'm 21 and living alone in a tiny apartment that seems like mine. You must be fully aware of my father, Gary, my equal stepmother, Holly, and my 23-year-old stepsister, Martin, in order to comprehend it. It still stings a little when I think back on everything that transpired. I became engaged during my sister's wedding after she ruined my 18th birthday celebration by announcing her pregnancy after years of bullying me. Anguish that will not go away, but I must make an effort to comprehend it in order to put it all together. My dad was devastated when my real mother, Janice, died of an unanticipated brain aneurysm when I was just a few months old. For a very long time, Dad reared me by himself. Dad was a father in his own right, providing for all of my needs, but he was always a little quiet and solitary, especially after Mom died. Dad and I lived alone in our small two-bedroom house, with occasional assistance from my grandparents' folks. We would eat in front of the television once he got home and prepared dinner, which was typically something easy like chicken or noodles. It was just the two of us, and although we didn't chat much, the stillness wasn't awkward. But things began to change when I was 13. Holly, who worked in the HR division of the same firm as me, was the lady Dad began dating after they met at work. He informed me about her that afternoon when I was in the living room reading a book. He entered and started to pace, as he often did when he was anxious. After clearing his throat a few times, he said, "I think it's time you met the person I really like." I tried to seem excited, but I don't believe I understood. I didn't want things to change because I was used to it being just Dad and me. But I also knew he was lonely, so I just nodded and said, "Okay, Dad, that's good." I was rather convinced when I first met the daughter of Martin, Holly, at our home. I recall being quite anxious the entire day when my dad invited them over for supper. Despite the likelihood that they wouldn't enter my room, I cleaned it. Martin, who was 2 years older than me and 15 years old, entered the room as if she owned it. She gave me a thorough examination, and I immediately felt self-conscious. Martin wore a fancy dress and makeup that made her look like she had stepped out of a magazine, and it was clear from the moment we met that she didn't like me. I was wearing my favorite jeans, a pair I bought for my birthday, and a simple t-shirt. She seemed to view me as a threat, or maybe as someone she might make fun of. She started to subtly ruin my life by saying things like, "Oh, are you sure you want to wear that?" in reference to my attire, in the same silly, charming manner. I had a small circle of close friends who were loyal to each other despite not being popular, and she made fun of me for not having a partner by bragging about her own dates in public and asking me out loud, "You still don't have a boyfriend?" Martin would pretend to be friendly in an attempt to gain their approval, but then she would say things like, "I heard she talks about you behind your back. She's not really as nice as she seems." She was cruel, and I didn't understand what I had done to earn her such a strong dislike. She even attempted to incite my pals to oppose me. Martin had her own issues and was someone she could target. Her parents' divorce, I suppose, hadn't been pleasant. There had been a lot of animosity and arguing. She lived with her mother, Holly, for half the month, and her father, who resided in a different town, for the other half. She talked about how much fun they had together all the time, and she seemed to be a lot closer to her dad. I only felt like I could breathe during the 2 weeks that Martin was with her father. I spent more time with Dad, going for walks or watching old movies. It was a nightmare in high school. There were a lot of different kinds of people at the school where Martin and I went, which had thousands of kids. Martin nevertheless managed to make me unhappy. She would make loud comments about me in the cafeteria so everyone could hear them, accidentally bump into me in the busy corridors and cause me to drop my books, and even try to make me look foolish in front of the class by making disparaging statements about me. Additionally, he appeared more relaxed without Martin. In order to deal with it, I decided to just blend in by sitting in the back of the class and become the it girl. The majority of my time was spent reading or painting in my room, and I kept this to myself out of fear that Dad and Holly wouldn't believe me and would think I was being dramatic or envious of Martin. Additionally, I didn't want to exacerbate the situation because, to be honest, I didn't want to come across as weak and reasoned that perhaps if I ignored it, it would finally end. I was even more relieved the day she moved out, as I could now unwind in my own house without worrying about her actions or words. It wasn't permanent, of course, but every other weekend Martin was home, and those weekends were awful. Her stepsister got admitted to study business administration at a respectable university a few hours away when Martin turned 18. She was ecstatic to move out and begin a new life. I came to dread such weekends and would spend much of my time in my room. In an attempt to blend in, I was aware that attempting to attract any attention would just exacerbate the situation. Martin would accuse me of attempting to take her attention out of jealousy, and I started to believe that perhaps I wasn't as significant as she was. When Dad and Holly started fussing over her and questioning her about college, her grades, and her boyfriend Jeremy, The whole attitude in the house would change, as important as Martin's. Martin and Jeremy had been dating since their first year of high school and were one of those couples who appeared to be drawn to one another. Despite attending the same college, they were required to live in different dorms, one designated for boys and one for girls. Martin, however, made the decision to leave the dorms after her second semester, and she and Jeremy located a modest 2-bedroom apartment near campus. She wasn't going home as frequently, even though it was simply a normal student apartment. I had never had a better time in my life than that. My dad surprised me by saying he wanted to give me a huge party as my 18th birthday approached. Because he knew I enjoyed jazz music, he went all out, ordering a ton of food, renting tables and chairs, and even hiring a jazz band. I like listening to vintage jazz records and had been taking piano lessons for a few years. It was a thoughtful and unexpected gesture that gave me the impression that he truly noticed me and understood what I was talking about. It looked beautiful when Dad decorated our house with balloons and lights for the party. My core group and folks I could dependably count on were my school pals and a few others, so I invited them. In addition, I invited several relatives from Dad's side of the family, who were always nice to me even though I didn't see them often. Naturally, Martin and Jeremy were present, and I made an effort to suppress my nervousness in order to enjoy my birthday and experience being special for the first time. In fact, I felt terrific for a few hours while dancing to the music and chatting with my friends. When the cake arrived, it was a massive chocolate cake with 2 layers, which was my favorite. It had white icing and tiny chocolate shavings on top, and my dad had ordered it from my favorite bakery. I was ready to blow out the candles as everyone was singing Happy Birthday when Martin cleared her throat so loudly that everyone stopped and gave her a smug look. When she revealed that Jeremy and I were pregnant, the room erupted. Jeremy gave them hugs and quizzed them as everyone hurried to congratulate Martin. With tears in his eyes, Dad hugged Martin tightly and expressed his love for her. I felt like a total moron as I stood there with the cake knife, and he just forgot about me. I felt a burning flush of rage and guilt climb up my neck as the candles melted and dripped wax across the cake. Jessica, one of Martin's pals, I think, then remarked, I wanted to scream and push her away, but I just stood there frozen. I felt completely disconnected from the jazz music that I had adored so much, and the remainder of the party was a blur as everyone focused on Martin and Jeremy, talking about baby names and due dates. Her voice was sweet and saccharine, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Martin, you should cut the cake. You should cut the birthday cake with her, she continued. That night, I stopped being the quiet, obedient girl and began to fight back whenever Martin said something hurtful to me. Martin, of course, loves the idea. Although my friends tried to comfort me, the hurt was too tremendous for their words to assist. That evening, I came to the realization that I didn't just despise Martin. I detested her for spoiling my birthday and constantly making me feel unimportant. The way she treated me and forced everyone else to treat me was another reason I detested her. I informed her that she looked like a pregnant walrus after Martin made a comment about my attire, claiming that I appeared to have dressed in the dark. Even if it wasn't my best moment, it did happen. Dad and Holly would attempt to intervene, but they never truly comprehended the situation. Instead, they would simply advise us to be kind to one another or to stop fighting. They were unaware that she had been harassing me for years and that Martin was the one who initiated it. Martin moved back into her old room when she got home, approximately a month before her due date, and everyone was making sure she was comfortable. I firmly refused to assist her with tasks like procuring her snacks and carrying her baggage. Saying I'm busy, asking Jeremy to do it, or ignoring them entirely are my options. It was satisfying to speak at last. Despite being pregnant, Martin continued to attend college, and she appeared to be managing things very well. Her mother was there for her no matter what, and she had Jeremy. Lily, a healthy 7-pound girl, was born to Martin, and she and Jeremy returned to their apartment rather shortly. Although they appeared to be struggling with the adjustment to being new parents, they were content, and a few months later, Martin and Jeremy declared their intention to get married. It was my way of saying, I'm not going to play along anymore. I'm not going to pretend that everything is okay. So even though it wasn't a huge event, it felt significant. Surprise, but I had to start making plans since I couldn't let her have this without making amends for what she had done. I wanted her to experience the same emotions I experienced, and I wanted her to understand what it was like to have her wonderful day destroyed, even though I knew it was selfish and possibly wrong. Bruce, my boyfriend of roughly a year, was the nicest thing that had ever happened to me, so I talked to him about it. He understood why I was upset, listened to me without criticizing, and promised to be there for me no matter what I decided to do. He even offered to assist with Martin's wedding, a spectacular event held at a posh country club that drew hundreds of guests. There was a 5-course lunch, a live band, flowers everywhere, and the type of wedding you see in magazines. I wanted to blend in and wait for the appropriate opportunity, so even though I was wearing a gorgeous outfit, I didn't want to stand out. After the ceremony, speeches, and first dance, Bruce took the microphone. He was beside me, holding my hand and giving me these reassuring looks. He cleared his throat and started gushing about how much he loved me and how I was the most amazing lady he had ever met, and everyone turned to watch him. Additionally, he discussed how I had overcome a lot and emerged stronger. Then he got down on one knee and proposed to me in front of everyone. The diamond solitaire in his gorgeous ring gleamed in the sunlight. After a brief period of silence, everyone in the room started applauding. As most of the crowd cheered and applauded, a few of Martin's friends, girls she had known since school or college, came forward to offer their congratulations. They gave me hugs and expressed their happiness for me. But when I saw the expressions on the faces of Martin, Jeremy, Dad, and Holly's, I thought they wanted to murder me. It wasn't quite the same feeling, but I did get a surge of fulfillment. When my phone called the day after the wedding, it was Dad. When he said, "You should be ashamed of yourself, I didn't ruin anything." I paused for a moment before responding. "What you did is unforgivable." I tried to maintain my composure when he said, "What's wrong with that? A wedding is a sacred event. What's more important than a birthday party?" He uttered those words. We argued for a few more minutes, rehashing old grievances, and I told him how he had always favored Martin, how he had never protected me from her bullying, and how he had made me feel less than human. I was talking about my birthday, Dad, the one that Martin ruined, and how you completely ignored it because she was pregnant, which was different. You should have waited, and you and Bruce should have asked for my permission before doing something like that. You think I need your permission to get engaged? As I mentioned earlier, Martin had ruined my 18th birthday, a day that should have been special for me, knowing that it would hurt me. Importantly, he denied it, saying that he loved us equally, but I knew it wasn't true. Eventually, I couldn't take it any longer, so I said, "I'm not sorry for what I did, and honestly, I don't care if you ever speak to me again," and hung up. I felt a strange mixture of relief and guilt after I hung up, and I kept telling myself that what I had done was justified, that it was tit for tat. In the days and weeks that followed, I didn't hear from Dad or Holly. They were completely silent. It was as if I had disappeared from the world. I did the same to her. It was fair, wasn't it? But still, a small voice in the back of my mind kept asking, was it really the right thing to do? Did you really have to stoop to her level? I tried to ignore it, but it persisted. So Reddit was my first clue that I was at fault, but I knew they were still talking to Martin because I saw pictures of them with Martin and the baby on social media. Bruce was my rock during all of this, listening to me without passing judgment or telling me I was wrong, just holding me when I cried and telling me he loved me. We started planning our own engagement party, a small, private gathering with only our closest friends. It would be the exact opposite of Martin's lavish wedding. It would be about us and our love, not about putting on a show. The most difficult part was realizing that I had lost my father, who had been absent and unreachable for so long after he remarried. We learned about what happened at Martin's wedding, and my grandmother said, "Your father is very upset." The second update was that approximately a week and a half after the wedding, I got another phone call from my grandparents' dad's parents. I hadn't spoken to them in a while, so I suppose they weren't mean, but they weren't particularly friendly, and they weren't close to me either. I had moments of extreme sadness where I would just cry, missing the idea of a father who loved me without conditions. "Martin needs your apology." I said, "I will not apologize." My grandmother said, "It's our business. You need to make things right with your family. They're not my family anymore." My grandfather said, "It's not the same thing, as a wedding is a much more important occasion."
She also ruined my 18th birthday and no one cared, so why should I apologize for doing the same thing to her? You're not acting like it at all. And I said the words before I could stop them. Then, like I had done with Dad, I hung up, trembling
and feeling like the world was against me. Martin had been cruel to me for years, and it's none of your business. For 3 weeks, Dad silenced me and blocked me on all social media. I knew Martin was always kind to everyone else. She put on this sweet, innocent act, and everyone fell for it, but they didn't see the mean, manipulative side of her that I saw. I didn't eat for a whole day after realizing that it felt like a physical blow, but everyone jumped to her defense, acting as though I was the bad guy because I had finally stood up for myself. Later, one evening, when I wasn't expecting anyone, I looked through the peephole and saw Dad, Holly, Martin, and Jeremy standing there. My heart raced, and I felt a wave of anger and anxiety. I didn't want to let them in, and I didn't want to see them, but Dad kept knocking louder and louder, and he started calling my name since he knew that if I didn't open, everyone could hear everything. I took a big breath and opened the door, since my neighbors would start protesting. Bruce was there beside me, and Martin started ranting immediately. She didn't even wait for me to finish speaking before she burst into this outburst, her cheeks flushed. "You intentionally ruined my wedding. You always have to make everything about yourself. You're so mean, cruel, and selfish. she continued. She spent 15 minutes pointing out all my supposed flaws and the ways that I had hurt her, saying that I was jealous of her, that I was always fighting for her attention, and that I was a bad person. She also downplayed the incident on my 18th birthday, saying that it didn't matter and that I was just overreacting and trying to get attention. And when I could take it no more, I started yelling back at her, matching her anger with mine. "You're a horrible person. You're just jealous because I'm happy because I have a husband and a baby and you have nothing." And she said, "You're jealous because I'm happy because I have a husband and a baby and you have nothing." The argument got more heated, and Bruce had to physically restrain me by putting his arms around me to keep me from attacking Martin. I was so furious that I felt like I might blow up, and at last my father intervened, grabbing hold of me. He tried to make us apologize to each other and make peace by saying that we were family and that we needed to forgive each other, but he didn't understand that he was trying to create a false equivalency to make it seem like we were both equally to blame. He didn't acknowledge the years of bullying, the power imbalance, and the fact that Martin had been the aggressor and I had been the victim. He put his hand on Martin's arm and said, "That's enough. Both of you stop it. You're acting like I felt like a child. Victim, I'm not apologizing," I shouted, my voice trembling with rage. "I apologize for what I did." I told him bluntly that I didn't mind if he never spoke to me again, and I believe that finally got to him because his countenance altered. He appeared sad, probably even a little ashamed. "She was worthy. You're constantly on her side." I went to Dad and said, "Martin is always your top priority. She's all that matters to you." Hull began to say something, but I cut her off, saying, "You're just as bad. You're only here now because you feel guilty, not because you care about me." I told her that you knew what Martin was doing, and you did nothing, allowing her to bully me for years. Martin, sensing that she was losing control of the situation, told her to leave, but before she did, she turned to me and said, "This was a complete waste of time. I should not have come here, I knew. Dad, I knew it was wrong of me to try to work things out with someone like you." After Martin and Jeremy departed, Holly remained for a short while longer. Fourth, Bruce was there the entire time, standing by my side and supporting me. He didn't say much, but his presence was enough. He let me express my heart. He understood how much I needed to let it all out. For clarity, I continue to refer to him as my boyfriend throughout this story because I was still getting used to the idea of getting engaged. He told me that I needed to learn to forgive and forget the last time he lectured me about the value of family, but I wasn't listening because I had heard it all before and knew he was just trying to manipulate me, to feel bad. The only cousin I had was Carol, from my mom's side of the family, and we invited our best friends who had supported us through it all. She is one of the few relatives I didn't invite since I felt close to Dad and Holly, but they claimed they couldn't make it at such short notice. She has always been nice and encouraging. I was aware that was most likely a pretext to keep them out of the family conflict. The fact that they were no longer welcome in my life was made quite evident. I received an email from Dad a few days after the party, informing me that he had heard about the engagement from a friend and congratulating me. He also expressed regret that he was unable to attend, saying that he would have loved to be there. I replied briefly, "Thank you," but I wasn't interested in rehashing the past because I was over it and resolved to move on and start a new life with Bruce. Bruce really went out of his way to rent a whole restaurant for the two of us as part of the proposal. It was quite romantic and intimate when he had them play my favorite music, which is a blend of jazz and classical. In other situations, it was a normal dad reaction. It concentrated on love and was completely different from the proposal at Martin's wedding, which was all about revenge. Since it's something precious and unique to us, I won't reveal every detail. Pure and simple.